If you're hearing us down, let us know where you're hearing us from. If you're watching a recording, welcome to Noble Warrior. My name is CK Lin. Noble Warrior is where I interview consciousness center entrepreneurs about their journey from warrior to commander to king to elder. We'll deconstruct their mindset, their mental models, actionable tactics, so you can take everything they teach you and go on and build your life and business with more impact and fulfillment. My next guest is Emily Griffin. She has led global teams at Xbox and Microsoft. She's been a radio DJ, club DJ, fostering community at the epicenter of San Francisco's underground dance music movement. She has 20 years of experience leading global teams in entertainment and technology, and also as a facilitator creating vibrant experiences that enliven people and help business flourish. Please welcome Emily Griffin.
Thank you, CK. It's such an honor and a privilege to be here. And on my birthday.
That's right. Happy birthday. Do a little dance party.
We got dance party going on always in my house.
That's right. So I want to ask you right away, at the end of 2020, you launched with your co-founder this Apathy Tour, where you interview impact leaders about their stories and empower a new way of leadership. Can you share with us what is the motivation, the inspiration that have you launched this at the end of 2020?
Yes, my co-collaborator, Jyoti Patel, who's also an amazing experienced designer and facilitator and strategist, we both had met and were evolving out of having worked more in corporate into our own independent consultancies. And so we, with everything that was coming up in 2020 and the amazing just unveiling that 2020 was for so many issues close to our hearts, we wanted to engage in a research project and listen to leaders and the kinds of companies that we wanted to serve as consultants. And so it was one part, an empathy tour for us and a listening tour to hear how they're evolving, how they're pivoting, like how they're being agile and resourceful in such a shift of a time. And it was also equal parts a campaign to highlight the kind of leadership that we are so passionate about and want to see more of in the world.
I think that's super brilliant. So what criteria did you use to seek out the different leaders, the different entrepreneurs, the different visionaries to say, hey, we want to interview more of these type of people versus the not so inspired aspect?
Yeah. Well, we as we started to pull together our networks and see how they came together, we definitely saw an intersection of tech and social impact companies and organizations. And so we have leaders there like Lauren Sato, who runs an organization called Ada Developers Academy, which is all about infusing the tech industry with diversity and in terms of trained, mentored, amazing talent to help balance out the balance of gender and that that's in tech. And then we have Imperative, which is a company that's all about bringing peer coaching at scale to corporations. So there was this whole range of people, but we definitely focus more on Seattle because we're here. There's definitely some folks, more on the West Coast. We have Emily Best from Seed and Spark, who's an amazing platform for different independent filmmakers, and so we was really tech, social impact. It's where we see the most difference being made in terms of economic potential, and also the leaders we were seeing that weren't just there. Like, we wanted to really showcase the power of leaders who weren't just thinking about profits first and really just holding up that hierarchical exploitive model that we're trying to break down and create something new from. We wanted to see leaders who are centering people and centering impact, planet impact, and centering pleasure, centering joy, and a different way of doing business that doesn't just hold up the supremacy of profit, and people that were really values aligned, really.
Okay, awesome. So let me quick recap, what I heard you said is it's not just about profit, hierarchical, exploitive type of model. It's about the people center, joy center, and making some kind of social impact that's being undervalued, underappreciated, underdeveloped. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely. And with COVID, it really was an accelerant, I think, for a lot of leaders to realize that they had to center some of these things. I think that there was a lot of has been a lot of talk about this for years, but with COVID and the collapse of a lot of the kind of boundaries that we all had, I think empathy really became central to how we were going to get through our days. Not just, empathy for others, but obviously our capacity to have empathy for others really starts with our capacity to have empathy for ourselves. So,
I love that.
mhm.
So, well, what are some of the tactical things that they share with you as a way to empower themselves as leaders to have more empathy for themselves, to discover more of it, to have more capacity for the people that they serve, their family, their employees, their stakeholders, and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, every leader that we spoke to and the leaders that I look up to who are out there just living out loud and being vulnerable and sharing what's working for them, everybody talks about listening and the power of listening, and um, and the need for, the need for us to really jump over this kind of centering ourselves, centering our experience, centering ourselves in our white, a lot of times white, able-bodied, just very, very privileged bubble, and actually listen at the margins, listen for underrepresented folks, listen to the people that are actually doing the work, because so many people are saying the work is getting done,
Mm-hmm.
but it's the how. It's like that how are we doing, how, that, just the pausing to check in and not treat people like machines, and that extractive model of just yep, get the work done, keep the production line going, but actually the power of being able to pause and check in, and the pause to ask questions, because that's what we're realizing, and a lot of the leaders spoke about, is that it's really this extractive, exploitive, capitalistic kind of colonial model, that it works because it keeps us too busy to slow down and ask questions.
So I'm, you know me, I'm in total alignment with you, right? Treat people like human beings, and ultimately, and here's the argument for ultimately you get more out of the people anyway, because especially if you're in an organization, it's really about ideas and innovation and an emergence of something new.
Yeah.
It takes creative energy, not the factory, let's just crank out things that we already know how to do and just crank it out. But for some people listening, they may be still skeptical of why shift? Why do you want to? It's weird to say this, but why do you want to treat the holistic human being rather than just the talent that I hire, the skill that I hire, the borrowed hands? Why that? Why now the treating them with holistic? A way of looking at them as human beings. I know it's so weird to ask this question, but
No, it's really great. And I think that, I really do have a lot of empathy for CEOs and leaders and people that go to bed at night thinking about the livelihoods that they are caring for. I have a lot of compassion and empathy for the decisions that leaders have to make every day, and for the stakeholders and the shareholders and all of the people and all of the needs that they're trying to balance, right? And we know that as leaders, that you have to be centered enough in yourself to really hold space for the either or, and the profit and the people, and this kind of paradox that we're in. We're operating in a capitalistic system, and we do have to show productivity, we do have to show growth, and my question to anybody that would, that still has that skeptic in their mind that is saying like, look, I just need to show growth. I need us to move forward. I need to show the numbers. I would ask that person more about what they think about innovation and what innovation really is and what innovation really means. Because I believe if you are hiring people just for their hands to check the box and to move the units, that does serve a purpose. And if you really want to innovate, you need people's hearts and minds in the equation. And that's that wholeness you're talking about. And that's where, when you think in this last year, when you look at the number of women that have dropped out of the workforce, and you look at any parent at home that's also managing, like I'm managing third grade here, like at the same time that I'm trying to get work done. I mean, like that's there, talk about innovation. Like there's problems to solve. Like if someone's heart is in the equation, you can connect with them and what really like and what makes them kind of like what makes their heart break. And there's and like what the problems that they're seeing in the world. And I really feel like if there's space for people and if there's space and safety for people to share that and to speak up and to stand up and be part of the creation of the success of a company, then innovation really can emerge.
Yeah, I love that. From an engineering point of view, if I boil it down to the simplistic throughput, this type of analogy, just think if you can tap into more resource or resourcefulness of an individual, then they'll be able to they have more spaciousness to create and come up with new things, to innovate, to cross-pollinate, versus, let's say, like COVID, a great example, right? As a parent, and now all of a sudden you have this additional thing that you need, your child is staying at home, barking or or crying in the background. You have less internal space to go out and create the things that you need. So having more empathy as a leader for your employees, having little kids at home crying and babysitting and teaching and schooling in different rooms, making noises. That's I think it will allow them to have more inner spaces to create new things. That's what I heard from what you said.
Yeah, and when you're reflecting that back, I keep thinking about relationships, and I keep thinking about work and the fact that most people, they're working a lot of hours, and the people that they work with, they're spending usually more time with than their family. Obviously, in the last year, it's been a bit different. We've, people with kids and families around, we've seen a whole lot of them and lots of people at work in person. But I just keep thinking about relationships, and I keep thinking about, even with our colleagues and our teams, how, we're living our lives together in this co-created, like entity where it's, we are whole people coming into work, and that have moments of celebration and moments of grief. And I just keep thinking about empathy, and everything we're talking about leading with heart is about really connecting with someone as like a relationship, like a friend, like a colleague, and how much really with culture, and as a culture executive and culture creator as you are, that people, in work environments, that's what's really hurting right now. And we keep hearing about the erosion of culture because we're missing out on a lot of that spontaneity and a lot of the celebration and the being together that we were used to, and which was a source of a lot of innovation and care and creativity.
You're speaking about the remote work setting right now, the Zoom, everything Zoom versus the water cooler moments.
Yes.
Where you get to interact, whiteboarding, pop your head in kind of a thing. Is that what you're
Yeah.
referring to?
Yeah, that's spontaneity. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Well, since you were talking about it, do you have any suggestions? Have those leaders that you interview share some of the ways that they've now pivoted given this new challenge? from the remote work environment that we
Yeah,
all.
I would say the some of the great points we heard about. We spoke to a woman, Alonda Williams, who heads up the YMCA here in Seattle, and their team works a lot on Microsoft Teams. But one of the plus sides that she was saying with everybody being remote was it actually created more access and more inclusion of people that wouldn't normally be invited to certain brainstorming meetings. Their team really started to embrace just more collaboration in a way that before there was a bit more physical gatekeeping, so to speak. So we were really happy to hear about that, like moments like that where people just were given an option to express what they wanted to use their wellness budget for and what wellness meant to them, or Alonda and the YMCA folks really being more inclusive with people that wouldn't normally be allowed in strategy brainstorming meetings. I mean, that was that stuff like that has been really important, I think, as that we know culture are those rituals and those ways that people, it kind of holds it all together.
I see. So what I'm hearing is before, because of the actual physical barriers, certain people wouldn't be invited in, but now it's virtual. They actually have now proactively go out and invite people who normally wouldn't have been invited to these type of collaboration and brainstorming sessions, correct?
Yeah, we're having to be a lot more intentional about including people because there is that, out of sight, out of mind thing. So how we're brainstorming and gathering and celebrating and all of those moments that that really make a company, those culture pieces, the rituals and the ways that we work together, that we've had to become a lot more intentional about that. Everybody has.
One of the ideas that I dream about is a virtual co-working space. So you don't have to say anything. You just come in, mute yourself, and that another person is working. So I have yet to see a product or feature like this occur, other than some of the mastermind group people that I'm in communication with. Have you come across anything else that is like new, innovative ways to to facilitate that digital intimacy?
Well, I'm actually curious if you've experimented with that at all, just on your own, organically, just
Uh,
gathering.
yeah. So as you know, Flow Fam, one of my weekly rituals, is my way of cultivating that digital intimacy and community sense, right? Where we basically just philosophize over lo-fi music, improvisationally off the cuff. So that's one way to do it. But in terms of virtual co-working, I'm looking for it. Couldn't find it. That's why I was hoping that maybe like, hey, you may have come across something else.
Yeah. Well, I think there's probably parallel scenarios, but I get what you're saying. And I think it'll be really interesting the more that we're moving into this hybrid time where basically, I've worked with remote and distributed teams my whole career, but I think it's newer to a lot of people, and it's here to stay. And this hybrid world that we're going to be in, and just the digital nomads that have been around forever are, we can help guide people that are less used to how to make it work in these ways. But co-working is a thing, right? It was on the rise in the last few years anyways. And I've heard how companies that are rethinking their physical spaces, it's going to be a lot more like that, where there's hot desks and kind of like it's more of a spontaneous place that serves the needs of the individuals and those moments of like intentional connection. But your digital co-working idea, perhaps that's something that you can innovate in, because Flow Fam, our friend Gavin and the Flow Fam Fridays is a great example of what is actually needed, no matter what an office looks like or will look like. Those moments of connection and play are so crucial for creating that psychological safety for these other deeper, more vulnerable and real conversations to happen in the workplace, because not everybody feels safe to bring their whole self to work. It's something, it's an environment of psychological safety is everybody's responsibility. And that's part of where embodiment, heart, creativity, like all of that comes into play, because we can all then settle our bodies, create more like actual energetic coherence together, which is not some woo-woo term. Like, it's real. Like, when we're in a space together, like what you're talking about with co-working, there's a level of presence and flow that's possible when you're seen and heard and able to speak your truth, make mistakes. Like, all of this is not woo-woo stuff. This is real. This is what makes culture work and innovation as well.
So again, we're definitely aligned there. As a recovering cerebralist, I have a PhD. The way I thought about the body was its only job is to carry my head for a good 2.5 decades. That's the way I thought, right? I didn't really care about, the heart or the body. Really, it was just the mind. It's all about the mind, right?
Yeah.
And as I get older, as I actually have gone through my own journey, I started to really pay attention to like, oh, there's actually wisdom. Wisdom to me now, if I have to create a visualization of it, is a Venn diagram of the heart, the mind, and the body, and the inside. That's where wisdom is, right? The embodied wisdom of it. So the question I have for you, Emily, is as someone who facilitates experiences, and you have talked to tons of heart center leaders, what practice, bring it down to what kind of practices or tactics have they recommended as a way to bring that somatic wisdom, that somatic experience, that embodiment to their employees? Have you come across any new and interesting ideas that you have?
Yes. And I want to just relate with also being very focused on the head and just, that cerebral all of the landmark stuff that we went through. CK and I met through Landmark Education and the Team Management Leadership Program. All of that was very, very cerebral. And I got such a clear message that I had to drop into my body, because I was like, I was almost like my feet weren't even on the ground. I was very productive. I had like an incredible hustle and grind going on all through my 20s. But really what happened was, by the end of my 30s, I burnt out. And I just, even my accomplishments, like even being acknowledged for my accomplishments, it wasn't even I couldn't even feel it. It wasn't even landing. I was exhausted. And so it was that breakdown. It was that breakdown that had me realize that, I had been called to do this training in yoga and tantra and all of this. And that was like for almost like my personal life. I kind of had it compartmentalized, and I realized this all needs to come into integration. And as a facilitator and experience designer and someone who's committed to working in business, all of my woo stuff doesn't always necessarily translate. So I've been on the journey of finding a way to translate what I've now can feel and know works for me intuitively. And I'm, grounded in my personal practice and my morning exercise and my morning breath and my morning prayers and all of that. But translating that into the workplace, the best thing I've found, and I'm a real fan of this organization called Heart Math.
Mm-hmm.
It's really teaching about coherence, and your own coherence that you can build with really basic heart breathing, which is, connecting to your heart, and your left hand goes onto your belly, and that slowing down breath. Because even just for a few minutes, it's amazing. And I challenge anybody this: when you're jumping into a meeting, you're jumping into a meeting, you're jumping right into that agenda, just like CK and I did right before this podcast. We just slowed down for a minute to focus on breathing. We settled our bodies, and it makes all the difference. And it allows you to actually build, once you're connected and are building that coherence inside yourself. Again, just like you need empathy for yourself to have empathy for others, you build that coherence for yourself, and then you create that group coherence, which allows you to open up the intelligence of the heart and your gut, because it isn't just about the brain, and it's not about one or the other. Like we want to build that almost like that circuit, and that is a superpower, and that allows us to, to like trust our gut and feel what a decision is going to feel like. You can actually just tap into an intelligence in your body that if you're just thinking up here, it's not going to work. And to add on to that as well, I've been doing.
No, that was a lot. Let me do a quick recap before you keep dropping wisdom bombs here. Okay, so real quick. So think about what I heard is, if you think about your, I guess your inner space as a circuit, you have a lot of energy, a lot of mental energy, sometimes when it's not grounded in something, right? So actually put your hand on your heart as a way to train yourself to complete that feedback loop. Like, hey, breathe for a moment, stay calm for a moment, close your eyes for a moment. And once that's complete, then you have, again, a lot more inner resourcefulness as you go about doing your day. And for those people who may be a little skeptical, right? Who the younger CK, like, he's easy to attack, to throw under the bus. Just try that on for a moment and actually just feel it in your body. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's about the subjective experience, right? It's about how you actually feel in the end. So try this on, put your hand on your heart, breathe for a moment to see how you think about it. And then you can start to deepen your awareness of this somatic wisdom that you actually have, to see, hey, this actually allows me to have more creative ideas, to be a more pleasant person, to actually have a more enjoyable experience at work, right? These type of positive feedback loops. Is that an accurate reflection of what you said, Emily?
Yes, absolutely. And a key part of it as well. So I like to put my right hand on my heart, and the left hand I put on my belly. So for women, it's below the navel. For men, it's a little bit higher. It's wherever you feel your solar center. But the belly is usually pretty guarded and is a very vulnerable place as well. So yeah, I agree with you. Like, this isn't just a concept. People that are listening right now can do it as well. And just to be able to connect in to your heart and your gut is like, all of a sudden your presence will shift. Absolutely.
And then I'm speaking to the younger CK. When I first heard about someone else telling me, hey, just be present, just go inwards deeper. And in my mind, I was like, what do you mean? How do you do that? Well, younger CK, here's how you do it, right?
Yeah.
Here's how you actually deepen your presence. Here's how you get grounded. Here's how you actually just slow down. So that you
absolutely.
spaces to be more creative. If that's what you want, go try this out.
Yeah, I love that. And I think about us in our team management leadership program that we were in, and thinking about those 40 to 60 of us that were in it together, and like up for transformation, up for like really like reaching a new potential for ourselves and for our communities. I think about all of us just having the potential of what could have been even more if we were just to pause and do this basic embodiment exercise. Because there's such this like settling that happens, because so many of us, especially in the workplaces, there's we're coming to a lot of relationships, and to a lot of we're walking around with our own history and our own trauma. And a lot of times, especially in a relationship and especially in the workplace, where it is a place where trauma happens, like, we're kind of bracing ourselves a lot. And I think that it's really important. I want to weave this in because I've been in an apprenticeship program with Resmaa Menakem and My Grandmother's Hands, based on his book, My Grandmother's Hands. And it's all about the somatic approach to anti-racism. And it's a chance to look at trauma and racial trauma, and realize that we're not going to solve these problems cognitively. And like for us to be able to settle our bodies and to know where we're at in our space, right? So you're seeing around your room, you can see behind you, there's like an animalistic settling down that happens that we need to tap into like our animal body in a way to really allow ourselves to metabolize and discharge and let go in a peaceful way, like this kind of like pent up kind of tension and contraction that this kind of, production line, don't pay attention to the heart, just keep going, keep producing, like it just keeps making us not want to connect in. So like these moments of slowing down can help us manyfold, and many of what we see and much of what we see possible for innovation and culture and healing, personally and collectively.
I love that. So that was self-coherence. Let's talk about group coherence. So what are some of the practices that you have come across that help induce, that help facilitate, that help provide, that help empower and support group coherence?
Well, a lot of my learning around group coherence came from my Jedi training, if you will, as a DJ. Because as a DJ, I am, I'm at the source of the room and creating a rhythm that everybody is tuned into and like locked in on, right? So a lot of my own embodied understanding of what group coherence is absolutely comes from dance music culture. And with that, it has a lot of, and this is really where a lot of my workshops and training with people really comes in, because I'm taking a lot of that wisdom and translating it into work and team environments, because you want to have, you have a collective definition of what good is, like in a good vibe, right? And like what it feels for a team to be like, really jamming together. And you have that is possible because you have a sense of inclusion and safety, right? So if there are, people being harassed on the dance floor, the vibe is not going to go so well, right? If the DJ or the leader is paying attention to the room and like reading the room and understanding kind of like where people want to go and what they like, there's this whole feedback loop, like that's really crucial too. So for me now, I'm translating all of this wisdom that I've gotten as a DJ and bringing that into teams, because what's possible with teams and as I design these experiences with teams, it's about tapping into this creative flow. So a lot of times it's DJing. It's like it's dancing and like being in our bodies together. It's also drawing and being creative and telling stories together, which is so much of what DJing has been for me as well. And it's about creating that those moments of spontaneity when everything feels, especially now, feels very very planned and very bound, very just like we're just trying to get work done and then go and have time on our own. So having these moments feel enlivening really is like a ripple effect.
So pause for a moment, I'm going to ask you to make it even more concrete if you don't mind, but let me actually reflect back what I heard, okay?
Oh, sure.
So if you think about an individual, there's the, consciousness, right? That's who I am as awareness. And then there's personality. So you feel a certain vibe when you interact with certain people. Like I have a signature vibe, right? When you interact with me, and when I interact with you, Emily, there's a certain signature vibe. And when you walk into a organization, when I articulate as culture, that's really the persona of the organization. You can feel the morale, you can feel, the vibration level, you can feel how simpatico the different employees are engaging with each other, right? You can feel it right away. It's a very different feeling. Let's say when you interact with, let's say, like a Navy SEAL team, when they're like super trained, they don't really need to say much. And then everything is just, seamless. There's a certain culture. And when you go to, let's say, a dysfunctional organization, there's some culture, right? There's certain like friction points and drama and tension, and that's invisible, but we can totally feel it. So what I'm hearing you say so far, Emily, is when you're facilitating, you're bringing your DJ wisdom of basically how to read a room and how to, sense the certain drama or certain lower vibes, and using the different mechanisms that you have as a way to tune and fine tune the collective energy of the room using music. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, that's, as a DJ, that's 100% my job. Yeah. And then translating that into a workplace, it's a different scenario. It's not, late night, Saturday night, letting loose kind of vibe. It's a business setting, but the principles really can be carried over, especially around creating a safe space, having a place for people to feel included, fully self-expressed. And also that power of improvisation is really huge, because when people are dancing and the artists are playing, there's that flow going on. And that's why flow is so important to talk about, I believe, and even in business settings, because I believe that what people engage in for the pure joy of it is actually a really great key for them to really see that and feel it and experience that, and know that that can be an anchor for their own their embodied wisdom of, that's what flow feels like. And what are the conditions of success for that state? Because flow isn't something you do. It's like a state that you can achieve if all the right elements are there. And I think that's different for every person. And I think it's different for every team.
So what are some of the mechanisms, some kind of tactical things that someone who's saying, I love what Emily's saying, love to create group coherence for my team. Where do I start? How do I, what levers do I have to even go about, this aspirational phenomenon called group coherence?
Yeah, I love that question. And I'm really inspired by a company called Work Human, which is also bringing a lot of these concepts to business at scale here in America and around the world. And they have their own formula for recognition and celebration of people and their humanness and organizations. And I would break it down to really, no matter what your team size, no matter what your organization size, there's we all know the concept of microaggressions, right? The things that happen kind of unconsciously that really
unpack that. That's a huge assumption that we all know that. Please.
Yeah, well, Mike, if you don't know, microaggressions are the unconscious behaviors that happen that really undermine psychological safety, I will say. And it happens all over the place in our culture. Things people say or do that cut people down and don't acknowledge their humanness.
Can you give me an example real quick? Just
a microaggression could be saying something rude about how parents are a certain way, or Black folks are a certain way, or Asian folks are a certain way. Like, you can see in a lot of conversations about race, you'll hear about microaggressions. And those
certain edge to, like, ooh, that sounds right, on surface, but there's certain undertone that there's a little sharpness to it.
Yeah, well, it's it's those unconscious biases really kind of coming out because they're just unseen to the person really doing them. So I say flip that. And so we want to bring intentionality to our culture and our relationships always. So if you flip microaggressions, you want to think about micro inclusions. Like, what are the small ways that you, as a person, taking accountability for building an environment of psychological safety and belonging, what are the micro inclusions you can make to acknowledge people, include people in a conversation? Did you notice someone was left off of an email? Bring them in. If you heard someone say something in a meeting and they were talked over, make sure that the spotlight goes back to them. Or if you're always someone that starts first in a meeting, have someone else start first. It's these small behaviors that can add up over time to make people feel seen, included, and belong to your crew.
Mm. I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah.
Micro inclusions.
Yeah. Micro inclusions to make people feel seen and included.
Mhm.
You know, that's such a beautiful way to articulate it. Well, let's actually bring it back to what we're discussing, because we went way way far off the track. We were talking about some of the summary of the what you learned from the Empathy Tour. Anything else you want that you learned that you wanted to share with me and my audience?
Well, I want to, just to invite people to check out the Empathy Tour at theempathytour.co. There's a beautiful archive of the interviews that we had with these leaders, and each of them shared, we asked the same questions of every leader because we really wanted to highlight three different aspects of, of what we were seeing empathy expressed as, which is bold leadership, creative action, and evolutionary business. And so we approached the whole tour looking at things in a like systems thinking kind of way, like what people feel passionate about personally, and then how is that resonating with their teams and organizations, and how is that connected to what's happening on a global level. So you'll see leaders talking about racial justice, um, climate change, political activism. I mean, these are leaders that aren't shying away from the, what's really going on, and they're finding ways to be creative and outspoken with all of that. And so, because Joe T and I are facilitators, we really distilled a lot of that wisdom and wanted to make it actionable for everybody. So there's a free guidebook there with self-reflection exercises for yourself and creative exercises you can do with your team. So that ranges from, from really looking at values alignment with your shareholders and stakeholders to having a dance party together. I mean, it's a whole range of stuff.
I love that. On this podcast, we talk a lot about fractal phenomenon. Confucius said it starts with self-mastery, then it's family, then it's country, and then world, right? So ultimately, if you want to, let's say, change the world, tackle these really big issues, these amorphous issues like racism as an example. Well, it starts with the micro inclusions, right? Start with the self, what you could do within yourself, and then your family unit, your company unit, and then the ripple effect continues. So I'm curious. You've interviewed all these great impact leaders. Whose story really helped you? Like, wow, what an amazing person! I never thought about it this way. I never knew about this person. That this person would just at that high vibration, high vibe level that you talked about, that you were so surprised to discover.
Through the Empathy Tour.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have to give a shout out to my sister Cleo Barnett. She is the executive director of the Amplifier organization, and they are an amazing art organization who is putting out global campaigns for climate justice, racial justice, world health, the reset of capitalism, and it's an art organization. And my heart, I'm an artist at heart, and to see the vision of this come to fruition, and to see a white woman who's very like really aware of her privilege and leading from that place of openness and vulnerability, and like deeply inclusive of many voices, and truly by its own name amplifying so many amazing voices and so many artists. It really has inspired me. And to see that, we were talking about, we're operating in capitalism. And when we asked her about measuring success, and how as an organization are they measuring success, we had a really great conversation about the nature of changing hearts and minds and what that means. And when they get statistics back about the number of impressions, like their poster campaign or one of their campaigns in schools did, like they're getting reports back about decreased bullying in schools and places where their art is. And so I'm just deeply inspired by the power of art and music. And what it's kind of like that. There's that Venn diagram of like what breaks your heart, and also like what you're good at as part of like finding your purpose. And I really feel that possibility of, what makes me super frustrated and angry and upset as a driver for me to really hone my skills towards, making an impact where I can. And I'm still on that journey.
I love that. Yeah, on this podcast we say a lot. The source, your biggest wound will reveal the source of your superpower.
Absolutely.
So how would you articulate your purpose, your life's mission?
That's a really great question. I might have to get back to you on that, but
Sure.
I would say, I grew up moving around a lot, and lost a lot of friends along the way for many different reasons. But I think that's part of what drives me around that group coherence that we're talking about, and that potential of anchoring and centering in, and really finding that home in your own heart, and being able to have that, be a part of a community or team or organization, and how important that is for just happiness and joy. And in my life, that is absolutely a driver of what I have energy to do. Always is connected to art and community, and that joy. And that is just something that I'm still working on, really believing that can be a source of, value and abundance, for my livelihood as well.
I love that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, who you are to me is someone who's deeply involved in culture, music, art, and use that as a Trojan horse, so to speak, right? To allow people to get back to who they are as a human being, as well as tapping into group coherence, group flow. So that's who you are to me. It's not super articulate, but that's who you are to me.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, when after a night of DJing, for instance, and I just think about the experience of DJing and what that is, and just the idea of celebration not being it's not about this surface kind of rote celebration, but a deep, deep celebration of life. That's what I bring to my art. And I think about that spark of aliveness that can happen with other people when they see someone else and their joy, and there's that generosity and belonging. I just think of that spark of aliveness that they bring into their life and their relationships and their projects and businesses. And I know that's what being a culture creator really is about, really like co-creating that, that way of being together.
Yeah, for sure. I think as a former culture executive, to me, what it takes to, a lot of people say, like, how do I copy essentially, Google's culture or Facebook's culture or, SpaceX's culture and so forth. I think at the end, the atomic unit, right, the building block of this is how do you engineer an environment that fosters, this peak experience of joy and fulfillment in a work situation. If you can do that, that's the atomic unit. If you can do that and do that a lot, guess what? This culture, the overall organizational persona will emerge. That's unique to your organization. That's the way I see it.
Yeah. And it's unique, right? Like you're talking about the fractals, like you can't just copy someone else's culture because you don't have those people. Culture is people and behaviors and those rituals. And that's like those moments of, of inclusion that happen intentionally and spontaneously. Like that is what your culture is. But you're right, you can engineer and kind of put up the scaffolding, if you all can build that common language and some of those common behaviors to to be whole and to be welcoming, and and truly like deeply values aligned every day at work. I mean, that's the culture that people should be aspiring to, is to really identify and really like live and breathe your values.
One of the things I love about Burning Man is it allows me to immerse in creativity, culture, and generosity, and even spirituality for a good 10 days, let's say. So what are some of the ways? So bringing back right to the younger CKs, Emily listening for this. Sounds awesome. Love it. Love to do this. What are some of the ways that they can start to engineer an environment for these type of peak experiences to occur in their organization?
It's a great question. I keep thinking about the power of experimenting and the power of play and the power of improvisation. So in one of my favorite organizations I work for, Substantial, who have an incredible culture, I loved that, as much as, we were focused on utilization and those billable hours and like, going fast and like, building amazing digital products, with, fast and with, and quality. There was really these really beautiful moments in between projects where we played like, as we would, like, there were games created, like successful games or plugins to, a tool that we were using like Trello, like that came out of a culture that was really just up for experimenting and playing together. And itself, we were talking about, yeah, that all sounds really nice, but we just have to get work done kind of attitude. Like, you really miss out on these moments that really could end up becoming, their own successful products, or, these own successful experiences out of your company, because that culture was, we just wanted to play and build and make cool stuff and have fun doing it together. And that was a really cool lesson for me to witness and to be a part of. That sense of play that was there, just because we just loved being together and making cool stuff.
So Emily, I'm gonna push you just a little bit, right? Lovingly nudging you for more details a little bit. Okay. So I am an aspirational organization or aspirational entrepreneur. Let's say I'm all about the head. It's all about results. And now I hear about this. Sounds really inspiring, but it's a huge step in my mind, right? So what are some of the ways or tiny steps, micro steps can I take towards bringing more play into my organization? I think that would be very helpful for someone who is super heady, inspired, but still super heady, moving towards the organization of playfulness and fun and inspire ideas and so forth.
Yes, especially in this environment now where we can't get together and, go on a retreat, or, do one of those like trust falls together to build that kind of like trust and play together. We're having to figure this out, and leaders are having to figure this out in an environment where we're all still remote and distributed. So I love this question, and my mind and heart has been exploring, how do you make someone virtually take a trust fall, right? And like have this experience together where you can be vulnerable and play together and get that bond that comes from that. Trust is that bond that's built, slowly over time. So as a facilitator, I have to point to, creative play and games that you could play, even that would take 5 minutes at the beginning of your next meeting. There's an amazing resource from my teacher, Jenny Sauerklein, in the Bay Area. She runs an amazing school called Scaling Intimacy. So this could work for groups of people. We do work with groups of people that, 80, hundreds of people, and you can make it feel a lot really intimate using some of these games. But I want to turn people on to her resource called playonpurpose.com. And she's got a whole bank and a whole library of really amazing games that you can integrate into your virtual meetings. And it's amazing how like like we were saying, even a couple of minutes at the beginning of a meeting, pausing to take a breath, or investing 5-10 minutes at the beginning of a meeting to do an icebreaker. Everyone rolls their eyes at the sound of an icebreaker. I've worked with plenty of skeptical, kind of heady engineering types to know that that's in the room, and the benefits of doing just a really easy icebreaker question or drawing game at the beginning of your meetings is a great small step to just build a little bit of creativity and play and vulnerability into your culture. Yeah.
That. It's interesting that so I've been that engineer who rolls my eyes for these type of icebreakers, and I always appreciated having done it. So my subconscious loved it, my conscious was judging it, right? So
totally get it.
Even as a leader, I mean, now I facilitate these type of things. So for me, it's like, I see what you're doing, you're gonna love it, don't worry about it, let's just go, right?
Totally. Yeah. As a facilitator, I've been taught to have people in the beginning of a meeting just, okay, everybody roll your eyes, everybody just groan, okay, get that out of the way, and we're going to do this thing. And you're right, people end up, because it's the kid in us. We keep talking about the young CK and the young Emily, but it's the kid in us that needs to come out and play sometimes.
I love it. Well, before we ramp it down the official podcast portion of it, to move to Clubhouse for the after party, and CK and Emily, right? What's the number one takeaway? What's one action that you want those who are listening, who are watching, and what action do you want them to take from all of this beautiful gems that you share with us?
I feel like the most potent one is that the potential that can come from you pausing and breathing into your heart and your gut and building your own sense of coherence and centeredness before you just throw yourself into work and meetings and conversations. That centering will change your whole experience of your ability to listen to others and others' ability to really be present and to hear you as well.
Beautifully said. So before you go into a meeting, rather than just go, in the in-between time, take a moment to breathe. Expand that capacity for inner resourcefulness and inner resourcefulness. That's going to give so much benefit from whatever it is that you're creating. Beautifully said. So let's move on to the next portion, which is Clubhouse. So for any of you listening, thank you so much. Go ahead and check out Emily's Empathy Tour, theempathytour.co, and then you can learn about what Emily and Jyoti is up to. So thanks for listening. Let's move over to the Clubhouse.
Thank you so much. Peace. Mwah.
Okay. And Brock,